Over the course of the UFC's 30-year history, the company has bore witness to some of the best, biggest, and most established martial arts names, with each of these names attaining a level of global acclaim. Fighters like Anderson Silva, Khabib Nurmagomedov, John Jones, and a host of others have been highly reverenced in the eyes of the MMA public. But the road to prominence unfolds differently for every fighter. Some steal the limelight of the masses seamlessly, while others overcome extraordinary odds to achieve the same results.
It's been a long 4 years. Don't doubt me, I couldn't do it. The odds that I couldn't do it. Look at me now. Look at me.
And then there are others who have undoubtedly put in the work and the results to back it up, but don't still get the same level of acclaim. But not to worry, Fight Fam, because in our video today, we're going to be shining a bright light on many of the UFC's most criminally underrated fighters today. Number 5. Dricus du Plessis. Starting our list at number 5 spot is middleweight fighter Dricus du Plessis. Making his UFC debut in 2010, the South African has won 5 straight fights in just over 2 years against some of the division's most dangerous fighters like Derek Brunson and Darren Till. And it isn't just the victories that have been impressive, but the manner he has gone about dismantling his opposition. In his relatively short UFC tenure, he has demonstrated an elite level of grappling and striking acumen to a devastating degree. And by doing so, he has put the entire middleweight division on notice. Fighters like Israel Adesanya and Kamaru Usman have been talking a lot more about this exciting South African, so it can only be a matter of time before du Plessis finally gets his big break. Number 4. Arnold Allen. Another exciting fighter that is beginning to take his division by storm, but still not getting quite as much recognition that he should, is Arnold Allen. Making his UFC bow in 2015, Allen has won a remarkable 10 fights in the UFC featherweight division against some absolute killers. And up till now, he still hasn't garnered the kind of acclaim in the fighting world that should befit someone with that amount of consecutive wins. He has impressive victories against MMA household names in Dan Hooker and more recently Calvin Kattar. And after that impressive win against a perennial featherweight contender, it finally seems like the MMA world is taking notice. Following his last victory against Kattar, he finally broke into the division's top 5 and is scheduled to fight future UFC Hall of Famer Max Holloway. And another victory there would surely elevate the vastly underrated Arnold Allen to global MMA acclaim. Number 3. Beneil Dariush. The UFC lightweight division is home to some of the organization's best fighters. The likes of Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira, and Dustin Poirier are some of the most well-known fighters in the division. So it only makes sense that with a division as stacked as this one, there are bound to be more than a few underrated fighters. Well, step forward, Beneil Dariush. Although possibly having just about the worst post-fight interview game in combat sports history.
You're a legend, mate. If I ever become a father, and I hope it's soon, I want to be a dad like you.
And finally, I want to call somebody out. Joe, I want to call out your buddy, Elon Musk. Where's my wife's car, bro? I've been waiting 6 months. I've had the baby. I need a good car. I gotta protect my daughter. Let's go, Elon. Get me my car.
Okay, let's. We love you. Let me tell you one more thing. This might be the most important thing you'll ever hear. There is true freedom. A freedom that no one can take from you in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Don't ever forget that. If you remember one thing I say, remember that.
Beneil boasts an incredible 8-fight win streak in the UFC's most stacked division and is currently ranked as the number 4 contender. But for some reason, his name appears to be consistently overlooked for bigger names by matchmakers and fans alike whenever there is talk of a contender for the championship. But over the past 3 months, there seems to be more of a recognition of Beneil's skill set, with a lot of analysts claiming that he could very well be the one to usurp Makhachev as the lightweight champion, and with a rumored match with Charles Oliveira coming soon. Another dominant performance by Dariush would surely change the narrative concerning this vastly underrated fighter. Number 2. Belal Mohammad. Coming in at the number 2 spot of the most underrated UFC fighters is arguably the epitome of the word, Belal Mohammad. Belal Mohammad started his UFC career on a very shaky note, losing 2 of his first 3 fights, and the general consensus about him at the time was that he was destined to be just another fighter in the welterweight division. and in many respects that consensus has followed him right up to till this very day. Having conceded his last defeat in 2019 against Geoff Neal, Belal has gone on to win a highly impressive 8 wins out of 9 fights to send him into the top 5 of a 170-pound division. But for some certain reasons, he still hasn't been able to crack it among many MMA enthusiasts. One of these reasons being his grappling-centered style, which might not necessarily appeal to many MMA fans around the world, regardless of how efficient it is in nullifying all potential threats. And another might be his relatively calm demeanor in the public eye. But irrespective of these, you can't deny that the man's talent has been sat on for far too long in the UFC, and a major high-profile win against another top contender would surely change the narrative. Number 1. Shavkat Rakhmonov. And our most underrated UFC fighter amongst the current crop in the UFC is none other than Shavkat Rakhmonov. Making his UFC debut in 2020, Rakhmonov was always going to be in the shadow of Khamzat Chimaev, who was stealing all the headlines after making a blockbuster start to his UFC career with exciting moments both within and outside the cage. But Rakhmonov in many respects went about his business almost anonymously. Prior to his victory over Geoff Neal at UFC 285, Rakhmonov had won 4 fights in a row, with all the wins coming by way of finishes, and he was showing a level of dominance that should have put the entire MMA world on notice. His striking was crisp and he showed an elite level of wrestling, but many UFC fans around the world were focused on another killing machine in Chimaev, which meant that Rakhmonov's exploits were largely going under the radar. But after his most recent impressive performance and win against Geoff Neal, it finally feels like Rakhmonov is going to attain the acclaim that his talent deserves. With Dana White acknowledging the Kazakh to be in contention for the welterweight title, and a lot more UFC personnel talking about him, Rakhmonov could very well attain superstardom in the UFC sooner rather than later. The UFC is home to many of the world's most skilled and popular fighters in all weight divisions, and oftentimes it would be very easy to get carried away with the more popular fighters, while almost neglecting the other elite fighters on the roster. And outside of the 5 we've discussed today, there are still a multitude of underrated fighters in the UFC. But given that it can only take one big win to elevate fighters into superstardom, you can be certain that many of these fighters will attain the level of acclaim sooner rather than later. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to let us know by smashing that like button, and we'll see you in the next video.